Well, I mean, like, yeah, just try to be as optical as possible.
Oh yeah. Are you kidding? You know how annoyed I get with other people now? I have to like, yeah, you should have seen what I had to do with the incel freak at the end of one of the episodes.
Oh, yeah.
So it was funny, but it was like the censors are kind of funny. The bleeps are funny. I find them funny.
Yeah. Yeah, I remember I think it was with Mags. Someone said that listening to this episode on YouTube is kind of like watching The Sopranos when they had like the NBC reruns and they like had to censor everywhere. Oh man.
No, I just don't highlight it because I didn't want it to be a running gag where people would come on and just like say the worst stuff, and then like I like because then I'll have to just like go in and like edit it. And
Yeah,
so
that's
I didn't
true.
want to like say it was really annoying because if I said it was annoying to do that, like it would just like incentivize people to do it. And so,
Yeah. Yeah.
like, so I don't mention it. Like everyone's sheep, I just don't talk about it ever. And I act like it's no big deal. And so people actually are kind of okay mostly.
Yeah, that's true. Do you notice though that like having done like well, I mean Substack is pretty forgiving. Like there's people that are like like there's some pretty hairy stuff that people publish on Substack. I don't know how it is now. Like I think they're a bit more optical, but like I've seen some like borderline not to name names, but like
Yeah, no, I'm sure.
esoteric Austrian painter type of activity.
I don't actually know. I've talked to people that know people at Substack, and they say that like they've completely changed culturally, but I'm not used to that. I'm sure you're the same, where I just have like a totally censorship mindset when it comes
Me
to all this
too.
stuff. I'm surprised that they even let us do anything. So the fact that they do, like, I'm not like, I don't know, I don't have a problem with that in a way, because I just feel like just the fact that we're able to put stuff up in like a permanent way
Yeah.
is enough of a leniency. You know what I mean? Like people
Oh
will say,
yeah.
no, you could say anything you want. I'm like, really? I was like, well, I'm not. I just figured like we would, like I just kind of thought like, yeah, like if anyone's gonna get kicked off this thing, like it's gonna be us. But like that actually
Yeah.
that hasn't happened, and it doesn't seem to be like true. Like I don't really know people. I guess like some like old kind of like Oldhead kind of extremists that were kicked off Substack. But yeah, I'm just used to the idea that all these places are just like extremely censorious and they kick you off over like the slightest infraction, because that,
Yeah.
that's how YouTube is still like that. It's kind of funny that like YouTube is like this last holdout in my mind, because everyone wants to like isolate Elon for like buying Twitter, but I don't know. I just feel like that's stupid. That's like
Yeah.
backfired. Like when I go to Twitter, it feels normal to me. When I go to Reddit, when I go to YouTube, they feel weird now. Like Reddit
Yeah.
makes me sick. Like Reddit leaves like this totally sick taste in my mouth. It's like when
Yeah,
it's like,
exactly.
it's like the way like female journalists would describe like going on 4chan, like they feel like they need to take a shower after. That's how I feel when I go to Reddit. Like it's this like, it really feels like in a serious way, it's like this cesspool of inceldom, and like whatever they think incels are, like these kind of
Yeah.
like antisocial, isolated, kind of maladjusted. That's how I feel when I go on Reddit now. Like when I go on Twitter, it's like fine, it's like funny, it's like kind of freewheeling, like. But when I go on Reddit, it really feels like there's like ever shrinking pool of people that like continue to think that they're normal, but they all like speak the same, they all write the same, they all like just have this style that's really passive aggressive, and you could tell they're just like very embittered
Yeah.
um
Yeah.
after everything that's happened. And like I genuinely feel like I was just like kind of like a journalist reading the sick twisted mind of like the schizo America, but instead of like like a bunch of Pepes or something like that, it's just Reddit. Like that's what Reddit is now. It's like, so
Yeah,
yeah,
it's
like
like
I approach
Leah.
that with everything, including Substack. But Substack does seem like, to be fair, that
Yeah.
hasn't happened. Like it seems like it's fine. Like everyone's writing on Substack now, and like other platforms too. But I'm just not sensitive to that difference. You know what I mean?
Yeah, it's very funny. The only person that really got kicked off of Substack is Grifty Man because he was like plagiarizing. Like
I
that's
know, I know. It's kind
yeah.
of legendary. He just got a
Yeah.
GQ column though, so
Yeah, I guess he won,
yeah,
right? But
he won, man. He won.
oh man, I'd say painful to admit. I don't know, I never had a thing for
Oh, I
Scalus,
love him.
but
I love him. I'm like Scal's. I'm like Scal's biggest shooter, man. I love. He's like the soul of an anon.
I
But
remember those streams he used to do on like Periscope. It was
yeah,
yeah, those are great. I gotta admit, those are great.
yeah. Remember? Yeah, I forgot about Periscope. Cernovich used to be on Periscope a lot too. Periscope
Yeah, he
used to
used
be
to
like
like
the
drink
thing.
wine while doing it.
Yeah. Like I don't know. There used to be these little platforms that kind of like just disappeared and no one really talks about them anymore. But I liked actually no, Periscope sucked.
Yeah, it
I don't know,
sucked,
like
yeah.
Periscope was terrible. You remember that? Like someone would do something and like, it would just be like lagging and
It was
everything would be like
unreliable, yeah.
240p. Yeah, Periscope was terrible, man. It was awful.
I
You know?
remember they had Bitwave. I think the guy that like used to be, I think he like Ethan Ralph snaked him. I think it was Xander. He created this one platform called Bitwave, and it was like kind of like do you remember it was around the time where like people were going to all platforms like D Live or like there was that other one. I think this is like before Kick, but like you could like literally do anything. I think you had to like close it down. Like there was just a time where people like got exiled to these micro platforms, and it's like they suffered. They were like in the desert for like so long. But
Yeah, all platform stuff was looking back on
yeah.
it. I mean, it still exists
Oh
to
yeah,
an extent.
yeah,
It was very funny. Like it just because also the guys that like would run them kept acting like it was gonna be like the next big thing. And like
yeah,
I kind of was always I wasn't really pulling for any of them in particular, but I didn't necessarily want them to like fail. I just felt like they weren't going to ever
yeah.
actually become like competitors. And there were I don't know, yeah, there was that moment. There's that old head moment where people like kept having to say that like these other platforms were going to be like the next thing, and they kind of just like always stayed what they were,
Yeah,
right? Yeah.
yeah. Rumble was the exception, I feel. Like, yeah. But you're right about Reddit. Like, that's like every time uh Lee America on Twitter posts like that, like Redditors like taking photos of their like inner kitty squad or whatever. It's like the most ghastly like cesspool. And it's like, oh my god, like these are the people that, that have been but it is weird though, like there is like a cult of normalcy mindset. But I think like the new definition of what normal is, especially online, has been radically shifted with the events of like these past few years.
Well, I
Um,
think there's like an age gap too. Like, I don't really know what I don't know if I even believe it. I'm sure those numbers are cooked. If there are numbers that
yeah,
tell you like the average Reddit user is like under 30, I don't believe that at all. I feel like
no, no way.
every time someone says anything when I'm looking at Reddit and they're like, they say like, you know, like civil engineer here, or they like or like even people giving relationship advice, like they'll just
Yeah,
casually be like, oh, like I've been married to my husband for like 35 years or something. And I'm like, 35 years? Like, how old are you? What are you talking about 35 years? Like, and then you just realize that, yeah, like everyone's like a like the youngest group are like elder millennials, I think.
yeah,
It's like very, and so it's weird to have them say that because I never used to look at, I was never a big Redditor. I just like, look occasionally for like things that like entertain me. Um, but like I just noticed that when I started
oh
using because
yeah,
it's like it has a very manipulative algorithm, it just wants to like feed you the slop at the and like I started visiting now, but just because after Trump won, I just wanted to see like what the mood was, and it's just like absolutely expected is exactly what it is. It's like hyper delusional. It's just like totally fixated on Elon Musk. It's just very weird, very weird. But like I just couldn't help but notice that, like, yeah, it's like I don't know what they say the average age is of a Reddit user, but the people writing are like 100%. Like the youngest one is like 40. It feels like it's just very,
yeah,
which is like I'm not gonna be, I'm not 21 anyway. I'm not gonna act like like an Amar night, just talking about how everyone over 25 should be like summarily or something like that. Like I don't believe it, but still at the same time,
yeah,
right? There is like, it's just like people should be more self-aware of the generation they're a part of, the generational shifts that are going on, right? You don't want to be like this Gen Xer on Reddit talking about how like everyone else is so weird. It's like, it just has it feels like you lack self-awareness. You know what I mean? Like,
yeah,
yeah, it makes you
exactly.
look like you're being left behind. And again, you don't need to like trends that are not part of your generation necessarily. This is like a natural part of getting older, but it's that lack of self-awareness, it's that echo chamber stuff. Again, like the only reason I brought it up is because it gave me the same feeling that like I just was in this like toxic cesspit of like antisocial, and you know what I mean? Like I know you remember this, Gio, the way they used to describe, like they would call it like the dark web. Like Reddit feels like the dark web. It's like your like your gray hair asshole coworker, like who like kind of seems like he's not really like a nice guy. He's actually like a bad person if you break it down, but like he, you know, like it's like his dark hobby in the same way. It's like, oh, this 19-year-old in 2016 is like on 4chan writing like tech. Like Reddit is like your aging coworker who's just like goes on and like hyper fixates on like Elon Musk or writes like paragraphs about how like Kendrick Lamar is like the deepest artist that's ever like who's ever existed. And like that's how I felt when I looked at it. I don't know why I'm ranting about it, but I just couldn't help it. Like this is, you know, like so like I threw my phone down, like, you know what I mean? Like, you know, it's like, I felt like a female journalist, or you know, like she's going to like, you know,
that was like that meme,
misogyny and hatred, you know.
Yeah, that meme where like the like buzz cut and like blue hair. It was like a cartoon where like buzz cut and blue hair, like SJWs. This is like back in 2016, where they're like, we're gonna show those misogynists and dude bros what's up, and they like open the door that says 4chan, and behind it it's the Nuremberg rally, and it's like they're all shocked. Like, yeah, I remember that meme.
Yeah, like I don't know. I don't know. I don't know if how like antisocial I consider myself, but like, yeah, I do feel much more at home on like free, like even a place like Twitter that's like relatively much freer than other places. Like people act like it's just like the end of the world, and I'm like, no, it's fine. Like this is fine. This is like, I don't agree with everything. Some things are like I wouldn't post myself, and like some of the stuff that goes viral, I'm just like laughing at. It's just like, you know, it's just like the most. But no, when I went to Reddit, I actually felt like I stumbled upon this like den of like vipers and like really kind of twisted, sick, like that Elliot Rodger vibe, but like
the edge of humanity.
Yeah. That's the feeling that you like. Everyone's like angry. Everyone's like angry at each other. Like if they're not expressing like a very canned, like, oh, here's some gold for you, sir. Like if they have to be sincere at all, it's always like anger. They're just like so mad at like the way the group think, the way the upvoting works. It's just like, yeah, I don't know. I just couldn't, because it made me feel like, yeah, like I said, like I felt like, wow, am I like really thin skinned? Because I wasn't like offended, but I did feel like, yeah, I felt like I needed to take a shower afterwards. Like I was like, oh, I just visited Reddit. Like, like it was so bad. And I just realized, I thought, oh wow, this is how the way they talk about like going to places I like.
Yeah, like that. There was like that one subreddit, Are White People Twitter. I think it like got temporarily taken down. Like that was the worst one. That was like every day was just nonstop seed. Apparently, like they're saying that Elon is he's starving children through Doge. Like, have you heard about this? He's like cutting some kind of funding, and like that's their narrative now, that he's starving children.
Like Africans or Americans?
Americans, I think both, but like Americans.
I voted for this. I keep looking for a tweet to quote tweet. Yeah. Like I saw one where they like, I don't know, some of the admins, I guess some of the kids, they had like URL links that were just like really inappropriate names, and yeah, I just keep looking for something really good to quote tweet where I said like I want to quote tweet it saying like I voted for this, but like have it not be like, you know, like have it be like really over. I think that's good content. Like, you know what I mean? I just can't find anything that's like really over the top and offensive. I mean, I see all the fear mongering that's going on, but I don't think
the Cincinnati, the gun checkpoints from Antifa people, like black women with like Bushmasters, like.
Yeah, I saw Mr. Grove yelling at people, like the gun tuber. Are you into that stuff? Do you follow like gun tubers or like libertarians?
I don't really follow gun tubers, but like I've seen like I think I tweeted about how they're like doing this sort of like a lot of like bread tubers like vouch. They're sort of like apocalypse posting. It's like a weird like end times cult where they're like, the chuds are going to, you know, you're going to get put into camps. And so this is why you have to arm yourself. And it's always like, it was like some like, because apparently there was like some blood tribe rally in Cincinnati, like the you know,
those neon guys.
Yeah, like the guy I think he used to go by Hammer. He used to do the Hammer stream on
Is that the bald guy with that beard?
Yeah,
I've seen those guys.
yeah.
Yeah.
And apparently, like you had like these John Brown gun club people that are like, and they always have like viral tweets. I think all of it's botted, by the way, but it's like this one was like some melanated woman that was like demonstrating her tactical gear and like her techniques in the woods. And like, I think like a follower of mine was like, I think she had like responded to her about like, what are you gonna do? Like, are you seriously going to like start redacting chuds or whatever? And then that's what the quote tweeted video with botted likes is like her like stumbling around in the forest with a bushmaster.
This
and,
a
like,
bump stock. Yeah, like,
yeah.
well, no, I just think it's fun. I mean, when I saw people fighting over this, where like, yeah, it was all these gun rights guys. I kind of think it's funny in a way because I saw a bunch of stuff like this yesterday where like I just think it's funny how like
melanated
America is so good, man. They ruin like everyone's pet, like little pet project or like their little pet ideology so badly, and it's so embarrassing, and like they don't know it, but like, you know, like I was thinking about this because I saw several instances of it yesterday, and the two that were off the top of my head were like, yeah, the first one was the GunTuber stuff where like they were talking, yeah, they were do you know where they were? It was somewhere in the South or the Midwest, I forget, but
it was a Tennessee or I forget.
something like that, yeah. And yeah, it was like armed. It was just like armed mobs that just looked like so threatening, just unreal. Like if you have a shred of common sense,
yeah,
you would just like speed past it as fast as you could, or just like, you know, not go that way, just like. And it's just so funny because like I'm assuming, you know, I was watching some of these like libertarian guys reading some of their defenses. I'm assuming they're libertarian or they're just like Second Amendment guys. They're like Iraq war vets, no offense, but just like they're just complete now are like so bad that it kind of like erases the residual admiration that you used to have for like military service in America. I think people are like realizing this more and more, which is like that it doesn't like immunize you from having like such horrible takes that you basically are like a leftist.
Yeah, like why
millennials have like a difficulty.
Yeah, like millennials, like mill Twitter people, they're like chock full with like leftoid talking points. I like what happened, like to that traditional model of like the right gravitating towards the military was always a historical phenomenon. But like if you look at mill Twitter, they're all libs. Like it's weird.
Well, I think like especially in America, it's one of those things where the cultures become the measure of something, and then once they stop correlating with it and they become like the measure itself, it stops actually being a good measure for things. So like previously, the way we used to think of America or just military service in general in a lot of countries, right, is that it was like a bastion of like patriotism and like you know, traditionalism, I guess, if you want to call it that way, like just like conservative sensibilities, lifestyle, right? Like being married, having kids, like, you know, staying where you're from, etc., like rootedness or whatever, like love of country and stuff. And I think that all of that stuff got like so deeply associated with the military that people just kind of took it for granted that that's what the military was like inculcating, even when it just like obviously hasn't been doing that for a very long time, and it just became like an ideological trap. And you know, you know, it's one of those things where people just like fail to catch up. There's like a very long delay, and then you kind of don't benefit from pointing it out early because it just looks like you're signaling against this like bastion of like patriotism or stuff like that. And so for a while, you know, people just become lazy, and so they don't want to look at like, well, okay, what are the attitudes that this institution is producing or inculcating in people? They want to be like lazy. That's like fine. I'm not even like really criticizing them. That's how normal people are. You know what I mean? They don't like want to break things down empirically or whatever. They just want like a shorthand. And so the military was like a convenient shorthand for being like, yeah, like right wing or conservative. And so when that's not being true, a lot of one of the reasons it stopped being true is because a lot of it really was dog whistling, right? For a very long time, for the past 20 years, it's like, you know, military service, because it correlated with like traditionally conservative attitudes for a long time, it was like it became the conservative attitude. It's like,
Yeah.
in other words, being a veteran became like a right-wing thing. And it's just like, well, obviously it's not. You know what I mean? Like, it never was. Like, it was just highly correlated with a bunch of attitudes that are essentially right-wing.
Sort of like Lee Greenwood's song, I'm proud to be an
Yeah.
American. Yeah,
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 and so a
yeah.
lot of those things get wrapped up. It's like I think a lot of other people, I mean, I've talked about this before, but it's like, yeah, like basically when you repeat dog whistles long enough, the next generation basically forgets that you're dog whistling, and they just like
Mm.
believe whatever you're saying in a very literal way. And that definitely happened in the post 9/11 military. Like, people
It's a
conservatives in America.
Bojarian simulation, like it lacks a
Yeah.
reference to the original. Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. And like in America, we use like the World War II. Like, that's how that if you're a millennial, that's what you used as like your default understanding of what military service was about. It was
Hmm.
basically like a World War II understanding of it. And that becomes much stronger as a signal than like all the underlying realities. So like, as you have like a demographic shift, as you have like, I don't know, like the divorce rate of like military, currently serving men, veterans and stuff, it like increases like exponentially. But like,
Yeah, it's
people
incredible. Yeah.
still people still kind of just residually connect to this. And I think one of the problems with Twitter is that Twitter is like a place, even though people say Twitter's not real, they say it all the time, it's not really true. Or it's not true the way people mean it.
Hmm.
Like, Twitter's not real because it's like more real than reality, because it's like a decade ahead of reality a lot of times. And
Oh yeah.
not in every instance, but it's one of those things where people don't know what they're saying when they say it's not real life. It's like, it's not real because it's more real than reality is. And like, one of the instances of that is, yeah, encountering the kind of military culture and stuff, and like, people just have to confront that reality of that it's shifted, basically, that it's like,
Yeah.
no, it is no longer this like bastion of conservative values. And at this point, I think that that's already kind of seeped into the regular culture. Not to say that like Americans don't like value military. I mean, I'm just thinking, I don't know if you remember this, Gio, but like at the height of like the 9/11 stuff, the Iraq war, it was like, if
Mm.
you saw a soldier, you had to like thank him for his service,
Yeah. Oh yeah.
like,
I
walking down the
remember that.
street. I'm sure there's tons of Americans that still do that, which like in the abstract is like fine, I guess. I don't know. It's not really my thing. I never would do something like that. But like, now you just like, now in the Trump era, I think, even like, I was kind of looking for this to see like almost when Elon gets to like the Pentagon with like
Yeah.
the Doge stuff. I don't know if you been thinking about this? Like, like, not that I'm expecting it, but I was wondering like, oh, is there going to be like a conservative pushback where like the military shouldn't be subjected to the same level of scrutiny as like the Department of Education, or like, NGOs and like US aid and stuff. And at this point, I don't think that's going to happen. I think that even like the average conservative has been so transformed by the Trump era that
Hmm.
they look at like the top brass as just like libtard.
Millie.
Yeah,
Yeah.
like they're
Yeah.
just like completely useless bureaucrats. And I'm sure people kind of, they separate those things in their mind, which is like probably justified to an extent, that
Mm.
like, yeah, the average grunt is actually better than like Pentagon officials, which is probably true to an extent. But yeah, I don't think those sympathies really are there
Well, I saw
are there
McFall
anymore.
crying about Ukrainian funding today. That was very funny.
Yeah,
Like it,
yeah.
it's a no. You're right, because I think that I think like you're right. Conservatism has changed. For example, like the one example I could use, and not to say I'm comparing Elon to Joe McCarthy, but like there was that narrative that McCarthyism was stopped because he then started looking at the military and he started looking at
Mhm.
intelligence agencies. And I think that there definitely is evidence for that. That, it was okay when he was going after Hollywood, but when he went after the military, the Pentagon, and the intelligence agencies and rooting out communists, then that was like not acceptable. And then, of course, like the demonization campaign came shortly after. And a lot of like old heads in Hollywood are still ass blasted by McCarthy. So, but like,
That's pretty
I,
old. Yeah.
yeah, oh yeah, the ancient heads, yeah. But I think like things are kind of different now. I mean, obviously, there still is that like boomer Fox News demographic that will still like lionize the military. Like, for example, I remember This is like, speaking of Oldhead lore, this is. Do you remember the week when the Weekly Sweat with like Sean and Beardson, they like got into like huge trouble because they said "F the troops"?
Of course I do.
Yeah. Like, but that narrative, though, I think in a weird way, that was almost 10 years ago. But it's become, like you were saying, it's become like almost a mainstay narrative of people that are maybe a smidge younger than Boomer on the political right in America, where it's like there isn't this knee-jerk default worship of the military. It's like
There shouldn't be. I mean, we were talking about this. This was occasioned by it was this wherever it was this mob of like people with guns that acted like they were doing like community policing or something, and you had this like gun tuber veteran like Twitter accounts. Some of them were like pretty big, and they were like defending it. I don't even know if all of them were veterans, but I'm sure at least some of them were. And they were just like gun culture people, because it's not even what we're talking about doesn't just apply to the military. It's just libertarian kind of Second Amendment types. A lot of them are veterans, but not all of them are. It's just a general kind of culture where that whole thing was understood to be kind of a sign of being more right wing.
Oh, yeah.
And this is like yet another example of how outdated and wrong that was. And then they were, so they were all defending it. They were like, oh, this is good. And I was laughing because I was saying before how like,
melanated,
very funny because they just ruin everyone's ideology in America so bad. It doesn't matter whether you're like you have, it's like everyone except people act like you're fixated on like race or whatever, but everyone except like racists have their little thing destroyed people so like ferociously that it becomes like comic. So like think about like, you're this like gun guy, you're like, you're a YouTuber, your whole thing is about like being tactical. You have like the camo and everything about guns. You have this like autistic level kind of dictionary kind of reference in your mind about like parts of guns, types of ammunition, the ways to do all these things. And you're like fixated on, I don't know, the Second Amendment, and I don't know what other like
it's very much like 2000s libertarian conspiracy theory stuff as well. Yeah.
And exactly. And like I don't know what other accessories you have that are a general part of this culture, because I don't follow it, right? I've just seen some of the guys. Just all
they buy gold still.
Yeah. And like, so then like, you have to like, you love all this stuff. It's like your brand. It's like, guns are your personality. And so then like you have these like totally like ghetto
Black Panther LARPer,
and they have guns, and like now you in your mind, right, you have like there's like a fork in the road where it's like, okay, like I'm either gonna like use my brain and be racist here and say like actually you should not have like armed mobs of
melanated
people in America just like standing on the corner like reserving the right to like accost strangers in their cars or what, like checkpoints they were calling them. It's like, or I like have to go like the whole hog on my like niche kind of fixation or ideology or whatever, and like of guns and like the Second Amendment, like I have to, and like therefore I have to actually defend this and say that it's like cool or it's like good or there's a, and you can see like how obviously they don't think like this, but I feel like you're an American, even if you're like liberal, there's like that moment. There's that like split
that little instinctual pull in your mind. Yeah.
You're like, oh man,
it doesn't look very good.
I don't want to be racist. I'm just gonna like go along with it. And like it's like the other example I saw, I'm sure you've seen this, but I saw it yesterday. It was another like YIMBY thing, like another
the anti-suburbs thing.
It was like another like someone posted a graph that went viral, and it was like another anti-suburban YIMBY urbanist,
the urban planner people.
It's like it's just like I don't know, like I don't pay much attention to that stuff because it seems so like it's like people act like you're fixated on race, but it's like it just seems obvious to me that like without that element in a discussion about like where people should live or like what their neighborhoods should look like, it becomes so comically absurd to me that it doesn't just become like silly to leave it out, it becomes like intellectually bankrupt. Like it's like what, like in a way, it's like the most important thing. Like, it's just like, you're talking
No,
about
no,
like where people.
Kathrine had a viral tweet responding to that where he's like,
Who
well,
did?
you know the reason, Kathrine,
Oh, okay,
where it's
okay,
like, you know the reason why. It's because you can't have walkable cities. It's like, well, you have to eradicate the crime that comes with walkable cities.
yeah.
So
And
it's
it's just,
yeah.
it seems like so, like it's like funny because again, it's like this whole like with the Yimby Nimby stuff, like that is even more than the gun tuber stuff. It's like
Yeah.
such. It's like something that a right winger came up with as a parody with like AIs. Like, how can we have like Chat GPT like make an entire discussion about like housing and urban development policy without ever mentioning critical factor of like race or crime or safety, etc. The most critical factor, and like they just watch these guys who are like, I'm sure they're like, some of them are smart or whatever, and they just have to build this entire like intellectual climate around ignoring this. And
Yeah.
you see it like all the time. And I saw both of these yesterday. It was the gun tuber thing, defending the mobs on the corner, and then I saw some viral like anti-suburban tweet. It was like a graph or something. I forget what it was, but I just found it so funny that like no one, it's like no one in America knows what to do. It's like as soon as you come up with like some sort of harebrained like ideology or like theory, it doesn't matter. Even if it's like right wing, left wing, or whatever, it doesn't matter what it is. It's like it's going to become funny if it doesn't account for like, yeah, these very inconvenient realities. And it's like sometimes you want to know, like, okay, like the people who constructed this, like, did you just hope that like no one would bring this up, or that like you would kind of coast off of polite society, never saying, yeah, I like the Second Amendment too, but you can't, like I like I'm not anti-Second Amendment. I don't know, maybe that's what I mean. Like, and then they'll fight with you in that case, right? Because you'll say like, oh, I don't think actually you should have like armed citizens just like forming mobs on the corner, like pulling over cars like with their guns drawn, and they'll look at you like you're anti-constitution.
Yeah.
You're actually like a subversive Marxist. You're just like, okay, man.
There was a tweet the other day by 9mm SMG where it's like,
oh yeah,
how should I describe this? It was like some BIPOC trans individual with like all the stickers on the camo, the shield, the chest plate, how it has like the Velcro for the patches. It's all the patches were the flags, right? And he's like, look at this and tell me that everybody deserves the Second Amendment equally. It's like,
I love that gun like culture thing that you see on Twitter so much. It's very, very funny. I actually like it's like very sad, but like I do treat it as like genuinely dangerous, but not in the way because like those trans, like the left wing, their hair's like looks disgusting, and it's like all different colors, and then they have like they have like tactical armor on and like a gun. Like I don't look at that person and go, oh, like here's like a foot soldier for the revolution. Like I just instantly think like, oh god, this person's about to like, or like they're gonna like slaughter a bunch of innocent people in like their rage or whatever. Like they definitely they're not trying to convey that message. I mean, obviously they're delusional, but I can't tell whether it's because they're
impossibles,
because they're left wing or both. They always act like they're gonna be these foot soldiers and
apocalyptic war against the chuds.
Yeah, we can't let Musk take our estrogen or our guns or whatever, and they're trying to like edge post, but so it's like very weird. It's like, so I do interpret them as a genuine threat, but not the kind of threat, not like a militia, just like, oh god, this guy's gonna go to his Kroger's. This guy's gonna go to his Kroger's. Like, what is it?
He's gonna do Randy Stair.
What was the
Randy Stair? Yeah,
Randy Stair style, and he's just gonna start like the random harmless Mexicans that are like working behind the counter. It's like very, very like Ameriqua vibe, like
impossibles
at like the Wawa, just like away a bunch of like Hispanic day workers. Like, you know what I mean? Like that's the whole, like I just go, oh god, like
yeah, someone's buying a Wawa bag, like 3 posts for $5, and you just get yeah, that really is like the qua, like the people. Like Zoomers don't realize that lingo, the qua. But here's a Kathrine tweet. So he's replying to this Mark R. Brown, who's an urban development professor. Kathrine says suburbs are refugee camps for whites who are ethnically from cities. They lack walkability, quote unquote, because there is a barrier to some efforts that remove whites from cities to begin with. Suburbs lack walkability are a cost. The lack of murders is a feature. Oh
Kobepe is
man.
funny, man. He links because you can see when someone like quote links a tweet of yours.
Yeah.
So I see it like constantly. But like people constantly link the Rosedale thread to other people in their in their like Twitter
Yeah.
debates. I don't know.
Yeah.
I never like tweeted about this. It's kind of, maybe I have, but it's very funny because like I see it always. And Kobepe Anand has to be like up there. Like he is the champion of responding to people with the Rosedale thread. Cause like I get why he does it, but out of everybody, he does it. He definitely is as like the lion's. He has the lion's share of the market cap of Rosedale coin. Like he shares it probably 70% of the time. And I always check what's the discussion, and it's just always some like clueless. It's kind of like blackpilling to me in a way, because I grew up as like a millennial American, like very like the realities of like race and crime and like
Yeah, we never thought of it. Yeah.
urban violence. Well, no, I was gonna say it's like very ingrained in my childhood and like who I am as a person, my family's history. This stuff is like that. Part of the reason I've always been like interested in it is because it hit so close to home for like my life and my family's life and in my neighborhood and stuff. And I like that, people talk about this, but now they have like resources, like, not just the Rosedale book, but like other books. But also it's a little blackpilling that like people now are like, they've not Kovepe. It's, I'm usually talking about the people he's replying to, but like they're so like mind melted and like wrapped up in this like delusional revisionist history that like people are only going to know about it in a book.
Yeah.
Where it's something that like my friends and I just naturally knew because that was like our reality growing up in like cities in America and stuff. And it's just like weird that like someone would read a book and go, "Hey, did you know this happened?" It's like, this is like a generation ago. Like, of course, like this has happened to everybody. Like this happened to everybody. And like the kind of propaganda was so strong that now it's like people are gonna have to like, have this like eureka, this negative eureka moment by reading about it all happening in a book where for like a lot of my friends and I, was just like, your parents, your grandparents, your aunts and uncles, this girl down the street, et cetera, et cetera. It was like very, you know what I mean? Like to see it only kind of relegated to the realm of like abstract,
Personal anecdotal experience.
historical exercises and stuff. It's like a little sad to me. Yeah, because I don't feel like you have to be that old to like just have an ingrained sense of that reality. But especially with younger generations in America, it's not even that they're young. I just think it's that they're foreign.
Yeah.
Like I just think that like, there's like, there's like 50,000 like white people left in America, and it's like all the rest of them don't know any of this stuff just because they weren't here. They don't have roots that are deep enough. And again, it's not that deep. Like that book in particular was documenting things going on in like the 60s and 70s. So it's like not even that long ago. I'm not trying to act like you're a Mayflower guy because you have family stories going back to like the post civil rights violence and stuff like that. But yeah, I just think there's a ton of people in the country now that might as well be like ancient history.
Yeah. Well, like you were saying, there's a lot of it seems that academia in particular, there's a lot of very smart people that have to come up with a lot of, in a weird way, like a shield against certain truths or certain realities. And there's like a lot of brain power expenditure that's just designed to find clever ways to not address certain realities. Like I think like there's like you were talking about urban planning and development, but that's everywhere. That's in political science. I mean, that's even in philosophy nowadays. It seems like every academic field has the same sort of. I mean, I don't know what things are.
Oh
going
yeah,
to
and
be
even
like
genetics.
genetics.
There was a fight going on the other day about like Proto-Indo-European languages and migration and stuff like that, where some guy was getting like, I don't remember exactly who it was. I'm not that tapped into that. But yeah, like the guy was obviously just a lawyer that was mad because it was like, you guys are talking about the whites. Like you could just tell that he was like seething about this, and people were responding to it because like he was just mad that there was less of a traditional barrier to talking about this stuff from a perspective that he was like clearly deeply uncomfortable with.
Yeah.
So yeah, it touches everything. I mean, this is probably a big project going forward. I think this is probably one of the main like worthy topics for the right. I assume this is something you've always been interested in like the kind of direction of the right.
Oh yeah, definitely. That's what I wanted to talk about. Yeah.
I think this is probably, I think definitely historical revisionism, and not just that, but like historical revisionism is probably like a bedrock of it, but it's probably not just that, because it's a lot of ethical revisionism. Yeah, it's probably one of the most important things going forward that's going to have to occur, where people just look at these periods of history just like radically differently.
Like away from the sort of lens of like the hypermoralization that is unique to the contemporary left, that's basically dictated the terms of how you even look at history. That's
and like I do think, especially if you're under a certain age, I just think that sense is really lost to you. Like I am keenly aware of how upsetting it would be to have like something like the civil rights movement in America recast as like a total disaster.
Yeah.
Like I know that, but I'm sure there's guys, maybe even on Twitter, that are like in their 20s, their early 20s or whatever, who just don't like, that's probably most of what they've seen. It's like ingrained kind of in their own worldview. And of course, you know, they're on Twitter, so they're a little bit more radical than the average person, of course. But like just in general, like that, it was so you kind of had to live through it. Not the actual era, I didn't, but like you have to live through the era in which that was that view, that understanding. I just feel like, I don't know, maybe you don't agree or you agree with this. It's like culminated kind of in Obama.
Oh, definitely. No, I 100% agree. Yeah,
so it's not that you have to be around for the 1960s, you know, but you like it was the Obama era prior. It was kind of the apotheosis of this.
It was the crescendo and the fallout of it.
Yeah, maybe that's a better way to put it. Yeah. And after that, yeah, you could just feel that vibe, that people were so emphatic that like, no, what we've been doing is right. This is the right way to do things. And that's you can tell that's why people are so upset over Trump to an extent. It's part of it. It's just there's like a reality check that happens where you believe so deeply that what you're doing is the right thing, and a lot of that it deeply is related to your story of history. In fact, I would argue that it gets into philosophy of history. It has to do with philosophy of history and stuff, which is a lot older than the 1960s. But like this kind of idea of the general direction of things, and I feel like like Obama represented that peak moment, and then I think that people kind of didn't know what to do, because watching your own worldview become like exhausted is a very it must be like a very what do you want to say, like it would throw you into a delirium, you know what I mean? You're like kind of like up is down, right is left.
You're a stranger in a strange land.
You're unmoored from things. But again, I mean, obviously I take pleasure in it. I'm glad it is happening to these people, but also I just think since it was wrong, it had to happen. And I think that's a lot of the uncomfortable response to Trump, is that people feel like, well, no, because if Trump, it's almost like that Q post where it's like, if Trump loses, that means Q is wrong. Q can't be wrong, therefore Trump won't lose. Like, you ever saw that? It's like I forget exactly how it goes. It's a really good Q post. It's like a QAnon guy on like Parlors.
It's like Pascal's wager, but Q.
And I feel though there's like a live version of that's actual, where it's like Trump can't win, because if he wins, that means that the way we've thought about the trajectory of American history, Western history, was wrong. And like, it's not wrong, therefore Trump can't win. And that's like not a stupid schizo QAnon post. That's like the actual beliefs of like millions of people and like the entire, ruling class in America. And but he did win. He did. And that's like
with a popular vote as well.
And I feel bad for these like psychically damaged kind of, people in like an abstract way. Not really. They're just like the worst people ever.
They're terrible.
I don't really feel bad for them. But my point is only just that, like, you kind of always feel bad for necessary things that have to happen. Like, not that all of this had to happen, but the point is that, like, if you have like almost like a referendum on your worldview, some sort of adjustment has to occur. And I don't really feel bad in the particulars for these people, but you kind of look and because especially when people, they pride themselves as being like the educated, the intelligentsia
The
or
adults in
whatever.
the room, yeah.
Yeah, and you're looking at them with this almost like condescending, like, yeah, you guys are gonna have to play catch up with history. I know you thought you were in the driver's seat. You thought you were like you said, the adults in the room, but actually you're petulant children in like a high chair that's gonna have to eat the food, and like the airplane's coming and he has Trump's face on it and everything. Like, you know what I mean? It's a very condescending like view of them or whatever. But again, it's necessary. I mean, they didn't have to do that. They could have just said like, oh, well, yeah, like maybe we should like course correct. But there's lots of reasons why they couldn't do that. The hyper moralizing, you brought that up earlier, that they were too. Yeah, it was very unlikely to happen.
There's like a weird emotional soothing going on with them escaping to Blue Sky. I noticed like the first few months where people would mass defect over there, they were like, this place is so friendly and good and amazing. And it's like, we're in this together. But like that's sort of like a weird, like sort of narcissistic supply trying to break through in very empathetic language, because their worldview has been totally like rocked. I mean, for all of my criticisms of Trump, I do think that he really was sort of a historical referendum on, like you were saying, on almost a spiritual level. Not to like totally overstate it, but yeah, I mean, I guess you could say
that's fine.
Like,
I agree with that totally. Yeah, you could say it is overstated as much as you want. That's fine.
It's overstated. Yeah, I mean, as much as I criticize him, I think that on a spiritual level, it was a massive disruption of, okay, him being MAGA being a fluke and the American right wing being sort of like caught with their pants down by this victory. But in actuality, almost 10 years later, now you have a situation where there was a huge repudiation on especially like those like Obama core era politics and the way politics is mediated in the mass consciousness of most people. Like that's a devastating thing. Like people like I guess like people like Noel Cohen are just like thinking to themselves like, oh my god, like what's happening? Like it's
that guy in particular. He photographed himself, or he took a picture of himself at like a rally in like Manhattan somewhere in New York City, where he was outside like one of the NYU affiliated hospitals or whatever. Like they were protesting the banning of like child
impossible
hormones or surgery or gender affirming care, whatever it was.
Gender affirming, You're
just looking at this. It's like, dude, you're a grown ass man.
You're pushing 40,
like protesting for. I'm assuming he's actually over that. I don't know though, but it's like you're a grown man and you're outside in public announcing that you deeply, deeply care that like scarred, possibly like did, or like kids abused by their mothers, their like narcissistic mothers, like get access to these like complete bodily and mind altering drugs that like will ruin their lives forever. It's like, that is the sickest thing. And it is like, it's just, well, I mean, and on top of that, it's like, they don't even remember, these people specifically deny that that's what they care about the most. They'll tell you that they're actually like a communist and they believe in like a workers' revolution, but then it's
or
like,
I don't believe in anything.
Here you are outside of the hospital for kids, for gender affirming care, like, pitching a tent.
I know,
real sick individuals.
I notice. Oh man, no, it's true. But I noticed that there's this narrative shift where, for example, there was this one guy. I think he was like that irony leftist that had the well, I mean, a few of them have a David Lynch profile. What was his name? Gravity's Rainbow, where he he had the he had the Substack called Fascist Slop, where they're trying to sort of like for multiple decades of the political left, like affirming their worldview in popular media, especially in cartooning, they're trying to like reframe the slop economy as inherently right wing because of like Elon Musk or whatever. And like, it's very weird how now like the discourse of slop, it's like, no, actually slop is right wing, and like you chuds are the ones who love like lowbrow culture. But it's like for multiple decades, these same exact people were obsessed with popular media, be it like cartooning or video games, like reaffirming their worldview more or less. So it's like this weird, like, you know what I mean? Like this weird reversal that they're going, where they're like there was a guy, there's this like another anime leftist saying like, like video games aren't that important, like replying to,
I
and then
know, right? I know.
yeah. And someone destroyed them is like, well, Anita and Zoe went to the UN because like, but apparently like video games aren't that important.
I remember when that happened. Like I watched that live. Like I'm
Yeah,
like
me
talk
too.
about old
Impossibles.
but like that wasn't really that long. I mean, again, I have to assert my old
Impossibles.
rights here that actually wasn't that long ago in real terms. Like
Yeah.
none of this stuff was that long ago. People act like it's ancient history because the internet, especially social media, like warps your perception of time. That really wasn't that long ago. And like this is probably I did watch that too. It is insane to me that even now these people deny what they really care about. They
Yeah.
deny what their actual ideology is. It's very, very silly. It's crazy to see that even now. Like, I guess actually I understand it now in a way more than previously because now they can use like, at the very least, they can use anti-Zionism as a way to like position themselves as like genuinely distinct from like broader kind of liberal Democrat culture or whatever. But that's, I don't know, it's a little bit self-serving because it's like actually like just because people don't share this like issue that you've like kind of cynically elevated to becoming your pet, like no, Hillary Clinton still, you guys are still the same. Like I get it, like yeah, she's not like, accusing a genocide or whatever, but like it's, you know what I mean, it's like you're elevating this one issue in like this very self-serving way. Like actually your concerns culturally overlap like 95 percent. Like you're still exactly the same thing. And it was I watched that song and dance start over the past like week or two where it's like, oh, like these people, like why do they care about video games so much? Why do they care about movies so much? It's just so it's kind of like
egregious. Yeah, it's creepiness.
like one of those things where I hope that it's a sign that they aren't going to actually recover. Because I mean, in a way, it might not work because they were able to transform the society around them without ever really admitting that they cared about all these things. So it's like, well, I guess they never have to. They could just do it again. But part of me wants to just say that, like, no, you definitely have to admit what you are all about at least once if you ever want power. Like, you have to actually say what you care about. And there's something so distasteful to leftists to say, yeah, like I just really love non-white people. I hate white people, and I love being
impossible.
Like those are the most important things. Those
it's like the
define my
Jens tweet.
ideology.
Yeah. This famous Jens tweet where it's like,
Yeah.
you can be a bloodthirsty capitalist neoliberal, but if you disagree, like on the political left, you're not a leftist. It's like,
yeah, there was that like DNC thing recently where they elected David Hogg, and it was like extremely woke, where like they're doing land acknowledgements and like
melanated
women are like talking like I'm speaking like this and that, and people want to dismiss it like, oh well, that was just like, I don't know, they weren't anti-Zionist enough, and it's like, no, you like I'm just assuming that was their excuse because it is so, stuff like this is so embarrassing that no leftist wants to look at like a meeting like that and go, oh no, yeah, that's fine, I believe in all that. Yeah, look, you definitely do need like non-binary representation and like in your bylaws for when you're organizing your party or whatever. Like that's fine. That's but it's like, yeah, you watch that and it's just like, no, that's like a perfect, it is dumb. It's very embarrassing to watch.
Yeah.
And it's also a perfect representation of what it is to be like a leftist. Like, no, they those people were like committed leftist like ideologues. Like there's nothing, I get that it's embarrassing to have to say that about yourself, but it's like, I don't know, change what you believe then. Like it's not my problem, you know what I mean?
Well, that's what I mean. Like they had an opportunity to sort of like course correct into something I think more akin of like an older working class style like leftist approach to economic issues. Like I would say like before the subversion of Occupy Wall Street. But that DNC meeting just like totally blew that out of the water, and they're just doubling down. Like, no, but I was gonna say name revisions because I guess sure. I skipped an introduction. So I think what's interesting is that both of us have been around for a while. That we've sort of we've seen like very manifold, multiple sides of the e-right, the online right. Oh, and I think like I know me and you, like I know some people would accuse you of being part of whatever, but I think like both of us have sort of stayed out of a lot of drama because we were sort of like there back in the day, and we do know various sides of this thing of ours. And so I guess like what I'm trying to ask is what's like the origin story of Nightmare Vision? Like I remember you were like one of the first mutuals I ever had on Twitter back when I used to write for Thermidor. So,
Thermidor,
yeah,
Duffy and Carlo, baby.
post
Let's
CNC
go.
Giga Chat, yeah. But like, so where, like,
I
what
don't have one
started you?
anymore. I've been believing this stuff longer than I haven't been. It's
Yeah.
over. Ask me for a normie origin story. I don't have one anymore. I mean, I will say this, that I do agree with the general idea of staying out of drama. I don't
Mhm.
think that's just a good idea because, I have some sort of nefarious ulterior motive, which like I really resent, by the way, this like pall of suspicion.
Mhm.
Um, part of the reason is I guess it's a broader criticism of the right that I don't think this is true of everybody. And I
Yeah.
don't even know if I think this is true of the majority of people. I really love like being on Twitter and talking to like mutuals, even guys I'm not mutuals with, just like
Yeah.
really good other accounts or whatever. So I'm not trying to say the whole thing is one thing, but no, yeah, no, a lot of the online right and even before Twitter, to a smaller extent, are just filled with like really, really mentally ill, just horrible people, just the
Yeah.
bottom of the barrel of humanity, just like basically like leftists. I mean, you just got to be frank about this, but just like, look, if the whole point of doing something, you know, everything takes some sort of collective effort,
Right.
right? Everything. Even things that seem to be only accomplished on like an individual level really aren't, okay? And for whatever reason, whether it's because of narcissism or paranoia or financial motivations or whatever, like if the only thing you're ever contributing to these spaces is like dissension and suspicion and discord and like
Mhm.
confrontation and accusations, uh it's you're never going to accomplish anything. You're never going to accomplish anything. And the little secret is that lots of people are happy with that. Lots of
Yeah.
people are happy with that because they don't want to. They like creating this like overwhelming sense of like negative emotional energy. They either think they're going to benefit from it in some way, or it's just the internet, man. People are filled, everyone's a generational hater. You know what I
Yeah.
mean? Like you just fixate on somebody or a group of people or whatever, and you just like you can't, that becomes your new personality. That's whatever. But don't pretend that you're doing anything. Even at the intellectual level. I'm not saying that, you have to be doing something that's like, I don't know, like creating a product or like, you know what I mean? Like I just mean
Mhm.
like doing something even in a social sense. Like you're not doing anything. You know what I mean? You're not actually contributing to anything. And so like again, if people want to spend their time doing that all the time on Twitter or off Twitter or whatever, that's like I don't want to say it's fine. It's not fine. You actually should like stop, seek help or like find God or something like that. But don't pretend that you're like doing anything constructive or positive or helpful or just like anything that has any type of overall positive value. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like
Yeah.
that's important. And that does characterize like a large part of, I don't know how much, but it does characterize certain significant parts of the right.
Mhm.
Which is like, again, if the whole idea is that like, you're part of this like general political persuasion that wants certain things, you want to see certain things or you want to alter certain things, you know what I mean? Like like if you want any of that stuff, there's like an inherent cost to that,
Right.
which is like not being the most antisocial person imaginable 24 hours a day. Like, and it turns out, my point is that it turns out that's too high of a price to pay for
Yeah.
way more people than I ever would have thought.
Yeah, I know because I exactly like I think well you remember back in the day say around 2014, 2015, there was sort of like a sense that we were a united front, especially when Trumpism came along. But that as time goes on, I think there was a lot of like pressures to bifurcate and to sort of like, you know what I mean? Like you can see like this sort of shark looming happening in real time. Um, but what got you posting though? Like what was the spark in your head that got you interested in actually posting? Like,
Oh,
were you a forum?
I was lurking on Twitter for a long time.
Yeah.
I was following far right like content on like blogs and stuff like
Mm,
it's like the late 2000s, like Moldbug or like Taki Mag or VDare. Like I knew about all that stuff before like 2010. Like I
yeah.
was pretty young, but I've always been just for whatever my own personality disposition, like I was always like kind of interested in politics. I was always interested in like religion, like you know how when people say like don't talk about politics and religion at the table,
Mhm.
you know what I mean? Like I was
Yeah.
always like the opposite of that. Like I was just like very kind of like annoying. Like when I was like a teenager, I was like annoying and like argumentative and like I thought I knew it all and all that, all those like the way like everyone does now on right wing Twitter. No,
Yeah,
like
yeah.
yeah, and so I was always like in search for stuff that was like intellectually stimulating, like
Mhm.
satisfying. And I don't know, like at a certain point, I was like, damn, like American politics is filled with morons. These people are dumb as like, what the hell? Like, there has to be something better than this. You know what I mean? Like, imagine if you
Yeah,
like this, I'm trying to put it in a way that's not has zero mystique. Like,
right.
because to an extent, people want to kind of give it a little bit of gravitas, right? Like, oh well, I fell down this rabbit hole. And like that's actually what kind of happened to me. But really, it was just that American discourse is so dumb. It's so dumb. And it was really, really dumb in like the 2000s,
Oh, yeah,
like during
definitely.
the
Yeah.
Bush years and stuff. And again, like libs want to, like, I hate them. Like, I've always felt so proud for how much I've hated libs
Yeah.
because like there was this idea in the 2000s that the only dumb people were like Bush Republicans and like
Y'all
the-
Qaeda, remember that
yeah, and
one?
the
Yeah.
idea, yeah, and I always found that to be like obviously so stupid and so kind of such like a conceited like self-serving distortion of reality. So I was like that can't be possible, that like I don't know, like believing in God makes you dumb, or like not like becoming suddenly obsessed with whether gay people can get married makes you like an unintelligent rube. Like it just was such a clash of what I saw in like my day-to-day life. Like
Yeah.
obviously like I'm not Southern. Uh so I'm not saying that doesn't exist, right? I'm not saying that doesn't exist. It's kind of like genuine, like kind of dumb chud American
Yeah,
culture.
there's, like, a
But
lot of boomer Fox News people that, like,
yeah, that's
yeah.
absolutely true. But I just found I found it so silly to pretend that that didn't exist everywhere. And I also knew from my own personal experience that like left-wing people were not immune from sounding like completely illiterate idiots.
Yeah.
And I just knew that. And so I formed a general distaste for the whole thing. But I guess the important part with me is that I never developed that kind of desire to or a sympathy for the left, because that's basically how you became like a dirtbag leftist, where like you didn't
Yeah.
want to call yourself a liberal, right? But you were obsessed with some sort of like pure fictitious
Some niche
imaginary left.
movement.
Yeah.
Yeah,
By the
yeah.
way, that didn't even exist for decades before that. Like the whole idea that there was ever going to be like a resurgence of like communism or this stuff was all dead by the time the new left came into existence. Like
Yeah.
by 1970s, this was all over. The idea that there was this like working class, like a Marxist, like no, everyone was already an insane race communist before anyone listening to this was born. Like it's such a weird. So I developed that kind of almost like, you know, somewhat like, the aristocratic disdain for American political culture, but without ever being a leftist. And so
Yeah.
the only thing left is to become like an internet fascist. That's like the only thing left. Not, I didn't like seek out that. No, I was just like,
No, we
no,
never
I
sought it
like,
out. I was like a normal conservative, like I was a conspiracy movement guy. And it was like when I was
oh, I
like
wasn't.
in
I have
high
friends that watch
school,
Zeitgeist. Were you like a Zeitgeist guy, Gio?
I was a yeah, I used to hate Alex Jones, but then I started like binging Alex Jones in high school. And I wasn't a Zeitgeist guy. I always thought that was cringe, but like
Okay, okay.
I remember like all those like, but kind of like Zeitgeist because like I remember like those New Age documentaries because I was like a New Ager at the time, right? And so I remember like those New Age documentaries that would cross over into conspiracy theory, kind of like Thrive and Climactica, and yeah, even Zeitgeist. Although I never watched like the full movies, But like, you remember back in
I
the
had
day,
friends make me sit through Zeitgeist. I never watched Loose Change, but I did have friends that made me sit through Zeitgeist. And I was
yeah, I watched Loose Change.
well, no, because I don't know. I also I had a conversation with Pat Casey about this once, and I had to like think about it because he asked me the same thing, and I'm like, I don't have an answer for this. I've been marinating in this stuff so long, I don't even remember what it was like to not. But I also like I've always had like a very religious disposition, so I was always Christian. I was Catholic my whole life, and so I always knew that I was never going to be a part of the left in any meaningful like way. I just found that to be a non-starter. And so
Right.
it was like, okay, where am I going to go? But I did like, I don't know, like everyone on the right in America at one point, depending on how far they went, they had like some sort of flirtation with like paleo libertarian Austrian school anarcho capitalists. Like, yeah, I was reading that stuff too, like Lou
Oh yeah, I
Rothwell
was a
and
real rough party.
Murray
Yeah.
Rothbard. Yeah, no, I still like Murray Rothbard. He's just like smart as hell. He was great, a great writer too. And so I liked all that stuff, but it was just because it was like there with my like
Right.
generally right-wing disposition. I never became like this totally doctrinaire because I just knew that a lot of these guys were like atheists or Jewish. And I mean, with Rothbard, it doesn't even matter because he was just like an anti-Semite, basically, just like
Yeah.
based
He went
Jewish
from
libertarian.
Maoist to like Hoppian fascist near the end of his life. Yeah. He
Yeah, I
like
know.
went the whole gamut. Sort of like, I shouldn't mention him, but he's kind of like David Mayotte, where he like starts off as like satanic Wignat, goes to radical Islamist. Now he's just a basic perennialist mystic type,
Yeah,
that denounced everything. Like
that's fine. Let an old head, let an old head come out of his cocoon. Let him
I think
blossom.
Well, I'd be tired of being on international watch list too. Like that's his
No, but
blog
yeah,
is
so
crazy.
like,
They still let him have his blog. It's crazy. It's some of the stuff's all right. Especially he talks about like I think he translates a lot of Greek Platonist texts now. It's anyways. Yeah, go ahead.
that's the rage. That's the rage. You got to learn about that stuff if you want to be part of the future wave. You got to have this like. It's going to basically be like a resurrection of romanticism. People don't want to hear that. I don't even like this. I'm not even a huge fan of this, but it's just clearly going to be true. It's going to be millenarianism all over again. It's going to be, the early 19th century Bavaria. It's going to be Orthodox religiosity, strict observant Catholics next to, insane mystics talking about how the end of the world
pagan
is
Neoplatonists.
This is the right. But like, no, but I've been surrounded by this for so long. And so, I ended up, just in the general milieu, I found like the paleocons.
Oh yeah.
And then I was like, well, these guys are great, but they're like old as dirt. Where do you go after? And like the younger generation, of people, they just had a different bent. They were more like racially minded. They wanted immigration to be like the more preeminent issue. They weren't as some of them were religious. There was always fights. I'm sure you remember. There was always like neo-pagan fights. I'm sure I participated in some of them back in the day. But this was like the late 2000s, the early 2010s. So I was involved in that for a long, long time. And then I forget how I actually got on Twitter itself, but I don't know, like Ricky Vaughn, or I remember the Cuckservative. Do you remember the Cuckservative's Twitter account? He might have come out of MPC. And I just remember it was so funny. Like, I just couldn't believe this was real. Just, remember you could just reply to blue checks with like the most insane. Well, actually, I can't even reminisce because you can do that now. Like, it's like it's even worse now. Like now you make like some insane like now it gets like 30,000 likes. Back then it was just someone would reply to like a journalist that I just thought it was the funniest thing.
I remember Matt Forney said he used to like call journalists F slurs. Like that was his big,
Which again, you kind of, I don't know if you could do it. I'm not sure. Some people like get like, I don't know, like the tweet becomes like invisible, like I don't know, you can't like or interact with it or anything.
They still like, they're not going to ban you, but they'll make it like irrelevant.
But so that's how I like officially got on Twitter itself. But that was like generally less from that's just how everyone got on Twitter some way. But that was me lurking. I was just like because I don't know, I am like a conservative person temperamentally. I'm like, let me not get on this like public social media site and just start like calling everyone what I think they are without thinking about it. You know what I mean? Like I was like, I don't know, like there definitely could be like negative repercussions to this that like I'm not aware of. So let me just like chill.
And lo and behold, there was,
There,
you know, for
yeah,
a
I
time.
was kind
Yeah.
of right about that. Yeah, that is true. That is true. Like I got on like 2017, so it was a while
Yeah.
ago. But at the same time, it was after seeing a lot of people spiral out hard. So like when I got on, it was with more of a like
Yeah.
a little bit of a more mature. Not that I'm like mature on Twitter, but like, well, sometimes I am, but like, just like, yeah, it was with a more cautious understanding of like how your arc can really
Yeah.
go. Yeah. So
Yeah.
yeah.
Like that's something that, oh man, this is years ago. I got on Twitter because, you know, I think who it was. I think it was when I was writing for West Coast. It was Adam Wallace and Mark Citadel that said, you know, you gotta go on Twitter, bro. That's where everybody's at. And I go, okay. Like I had a Twitter account in 2009. I think I made one, then I just like forgot about it. Um, then like 2014 came about, and they're like, you have to go on Twitter. But I remember you said something once. I think it may have been a Night Owls before you started recording them, where you said that. Yeah,
No, I'm
I,
kidding. I'm kidding.
yeah, I just remember this. The posting like really reveals your soul in a way. I think you said like posting reveals your personality. Either you can like sort of go with the flow and like stem the tide, or you end up like some like brain broken insane person that just can't handle it anymore.
Yeah.
And like then you start like spiraling on everybody, and without naming
Well, that's where
names.
some of my well, no, I finished what you're saying. I'm sorry.
No, that's what I was gonna say. Like I remember you said that very distinctly, that the internet reality, like especially posting, has this ability to reveal an inner character that was already there, but it just had to like come out, you know.
No, it's true. I mean, that's dovetails with a lot of the critical things I just said of like the online.
Yeah.
Right. Like, you just see these people kind of who can't hang and they have these like wild personality fluctuations when in reality, like people are just posting. You're just posting. Like, maybe years ago it would have manifested in like a forum war. That would have been like a
Mm-hmm.
very funny, entertaining piece of lore. But the problem now is that Twitter operates at a much larger scale than a typical forum. So
Right.
what happens with these kind of like niche, maladjusted personality types is that it kind of just consumes you in a way where it's like, like if you have like a flame war with someone on a forum, even if it's like a politics one, and it's like you're being like, I don't know, you're arguing over like race or
The Amish.
or some sort of like third rail or whatever.
Mm-hmm.
A lot of people, they would have like relatively offline lives, and then they would like, there was like a duality.
Right.
But to me, it's very clear that like Twitter has kind of broken that for a lot of people, right? Where it's like you
Oh,
are
definitely.
your avatar, you are your Twitter account, and I don't know if there's anything good about that. I mean, to an extent, I know a lot of people, or a few people whose lives have improved for being on Twitter.
Oh yeah.
I know
Yeah.
mine has.
Oh, the
Uh,
same. Yeah.
yeah. And but it had, for a lot of people, like it's made things worse. And the problem is it's that totalizing factor that you can't kind of avoid. So it's
Mm-hmm.
like, you can't just like be like an antisocial, schizophrenic, paranoiac on like the forum and then go back to like your life. Like it's like
Yeah.
Twitter's like, it's just like right on your phone. It's like a button away. And so you have now become that like totally.
And if you
Like,
piss off enough people, then it will follow you in real life. Like that's
yeah,
just the
I
reality
just
of
saw a
it. Yeah.
post for someone saying that today where like it was a guy using his real name. I think it was on something to do with like Musk or Trump, but he was like,
Mm.
I finally understand the value of being anonymous. He was saying like, it's actually much more traditional to have like an anonymous presence online, because like even in like the in the ancient world, like if you just like left your town and you went over to like a new one like a few miles over, you could just like give yourself a new name and like adopt a
Yeah.
totally new identity. And like now, yeah, you basically have like an internationally recognizable singular identity that like follows you wherever you are. And it's like, yeah, people, like I know you've seen this, like
Oh yeah.
leftists and even right, some conservatives have done this on Twitter, like harassing people for like not posting under their real name, as if you're like, like avoiding responsibility. And it's like, to a certain extent you are, but that's like, there's a good aspect to that. Like, should anyone
Mm-hmm.
have to assume like a total universally applicable responsibility for the things that they
Right.
do and say online? Like, should you be responsible to every single person? like who's also on the internet for everything you say and do. It's like, no, that sounds like it would break that would like break a normal person. That's like too much. But you never have anyone say that. You know what I mean?
It's very, yeah, exactly. It's a very like it's almost like a weirdo like Landian Deleuzian type of like the unfolding of the unfolding of the inside out. Like there's sort of like a mental cartography that carries with you all the time, but yet like people on the outside can be exposed to it at any given moment. And so there's like really no inner citadel of the self to like retreat to anymore. Everything you
Yeah.
do, everything you post is always an externalization of who you are. And like you were saying, this sort of like universal rectification of names where it's like your name always follows you all the time, even if you're an anon. You know what I mean? It's like, yeah, it's like a very weird
Well, and
phenomenon.
you know how autistic guys, like high IQ men are. What the real trap, and then you'll say, well, I don't want to admit that I ever did anything wrong. So what I'll do is I'll integrate my like insane online identity with my real life one in order to be like, no, I'm not owned. I'm not owned. I was always like this. I could say this at the bar. I could say what I believe at the bar to whoever. And like, if you can't do that, then you're like, there's something wrong with you. And like, so you'll have people who try to like thread the needle between their offline online personality, and it's just like, yeah, there's no, I don't know, unnecessary, no real reason to do that.
Yeah, like I mean, from my perspective, like I started off like self-doxed, and like I remember, I very clearly remember this. I remember the first article I ever published in Thermidor. I remember PT Carlo, he went to me, he's like, "You sure you want to use your real name?" And I never thought about that. I'm like, well, yeah, I don't really care. Because like the stuff that I do, like the art that I make, the stuff that I write, I kind of like am idiosyncratic enough to where if I were to be anonymous, it wouldn't, like anonymity is almost like irrelevant for me in some weird way.
Yeah.
But then I do like think about that. Like, what if I did decide to become an anon? You know what I mean? Like it would, like there was that moment, like when I first started, posting face. It's like there is like that shock of like people know who you really are, but then over time you sort of just become cool with it in a weird way.
I
Like
always forget that about you,
yeah.
by the way. Like, I don't know why. It's something different about your style or whatever. I always forget that like you're not anonymous. Like I look at you as like an anon. Like it's so weird.
Yeah,
Like
that
I
is
don't know
weird.
why. I guess it's because you had like a level of stability, content wise or personality wise or whatever, over time, which like hasn't always been the norm. People, and so like unconsciously, I like keep forgetting that like the name I refer to you as is like your actual. It feels like an online. It feels like an anonymous moniker.
Yeah.
So it's like, I don't know. You just like you've gotten away with it somehow. Like I keep forgetting. Yeah, you have like a face and a name and a address, and I can send pizzas there or explode things like that. I just never. No, it never occurs to me.
I think because I just tried not to piss people off. Like I didn't go out of my way. Like I think that's why like I have managed to like create a different path. But it is weird. Like I am very doxable. Like if you wanted to know where I live and all that.
I'm not saying no, it shouldn't. I don't agree with that. We disavow that. No one should.
Yeah, we disavow. Cool.
I'm just saying it doesn't even occur to me. It's like not,
Yeah, it's very weird. I like that. I like having it on cred, but I wouldn't like claim stolen valor, of course. But I think I did carve like a very unique path in a weird way. But that's another thing I wanted to talk about in general. Like there's a few online groups, but I guess since we were talking about Trump, the general development of, and I think you're very good at this because like from what you've said on Nightowls and to what you post, the general development of the right wing in North America is a very interesting thing because of the sort of like liberal political spectrum. But if you had to like say you're like lecturing a college course in base world, of course, like that, there was like that one Contrary Pancake tweet where it's like, how kids have the model UN in base world, there'll be like the model global anti-communist league. Oh man, that was so funny. But it'll happen one day. Don't worry, it'll happen. But say like, in base world, you're a college professor and you were giving like political history 101 of the right in North America. How did the right wing develop and how did it culminate from say '60s post-culture revolution to the '70s where things became gritty and real to Reaganism to now we have Trump. Like, oh, I mean, I guess the neocons in between.
I don't know. I
Yeah.
think the official story probably would the way I've like always read it is that it does, if you want to call it the right.
Right.
Again, this isn't to say that there weren't there was, like it's post-war. It would be
Right.
post-war,
Yeah.
post World War II conservative movement, which I used to think I understood, but the more and more I read about it, the weirder and weirder it actually looks to me.
Hmm.
It's like, I don't know. It's very Catholic. Why is it Catholic? I don't know. Was America Catholic? No.
Yeah.
Where did all the wasps go? I mean, there were some wasps, but it became like very Catholic, right? Or, it became obviously being extremely anti-communist. It was made up of like ex-Marxists and not just the neocons, right? There's people that like, I might have mentioned it on one of the episodes of Night Owls, people you've even heard of, like Will Herberg or Karl Wittfogel. I think he wrote that Oriental Despotism book.
Oh, yeah. Yeah.
These are guys that didn't become neoconservatives. Like Will Herberg became like an actual Jewish theologian, by the way, but never a Zionist. And of course Burnham, he was
Burnham was a Marxist, yeah.
he was a Trotskyist, but he never and he wasn't as like he wasn't like he was kind of, I believe he like participated in some of the kind of proto cancelings of some people, but he was never like a doctrinaire neocon. They didn't, they found some of his ideas like unsavory or whatever. But my only point is that it was broader than just the neoconservative ascendancy.
Right.
It was like everyone was like a Marxist in the early 20th century when they were young, just that's what you were. Like, not, I mean, obviously I'm not saying literally, but yeah, it was like in the air,
Right.
And so it would probably start with the post-Cold War right and like what exactly these people were trying to do, which again, I don't 100% know. It was definitely part of it was trying to form like a solid intellectual vanguard of anti-communism. And that I guess that would give way to the neoconservative ascendancy that definitely, it was starting in the 60s and 70s, but in the 80s it kind of came to its fruition, and that was again kind of mirrored today with the anti-woke left. You can kind of parallel the anti-woke left to the anti-Soviet left.
Yeah, that was interesting. They did
the same things, they serve the same function, whereas basically inviting people who are anti what they consider to be like a too extreme for whatever reason, right? They're anti-woke, and this other group is anti-communist or they're anti-Soviet, again for different reasons, but some extreme unacceptable version of the left, and yet very desperate to place themselves in the middle between that unacceptable left and what has always been seen since at that time as this like unacceptably extreme right wing, which is in both cases white Christian. Like in the old case it would probably be more WASP. In the current one, I don't know the makeup of the American right now, but it's the same idea that this group, because they are like admitting that there's this like left that's just gone completely loony, right? Where in the 80s it would have been like, Stalinist Russia or whatever, or just, Soviet Russia. And now it would be like, whatever people think wokeness is or was, they get invited to the right and they're given this like very prominent seat at the table.
The left me type of deal.
Yeah. And that hasn't really worked in my opinion lately. It's not really trying to pull it off a second time. People like Bari Weiss or whatever.
I saw that today. Yeah. They're like, we're not doing neoconservatism again. Yeah.
It's not success, but it wasn't. But in the 70s and 80s, it was very, very successful. And so I guess that would, some of the, I guess I, just go through some of the epics of what it means to be the right. And then, their ascendancy becomes so dominant, and then the post 9/11 era happens, and they kind of become front and center. And they just were a disaster. They just did so bad. They did so bad that even like I think even Matthew Continetti, I don't know, do you know who that is, Gio? Is Bill
Who
Crystal?
is that?
Matthew Continetti. He's on Fox News. I don't know what organization he might actually be affiliated with the Weekly Standard. I'm not sure, but
Oh
he's a
man.
convert to Judaism, and he's Bill Crystal's son-in-law. And he wrote a book a few years ago. Was it last year, 2 years ago? I don't know. It was something like 100, something about the right, 100-year war of the right.
Oh
I think
yeah.
let's see
Yeah.
the name of it. Let's see. The right, the 100-year war for American conservatism. And the only reason I brought him up is because I think even he admitted that, like, yeah, the right kind of squandered all of its political capital during the Bush years, and it led to Obama.
Mhm.
And in other words, like neoconservatism. And yeah, and then probably the next, I guess the next era you would say is like the Trump era,
Yeah.
basically. That's kind of how I would. I mean, there's a lot more you could say, of course,
Oh
but
yeah, of
if I
course.
wanted
Yeah.
to do broad strokes, that's what I would say. But the post-war right is a very interesting, totally academic. Again, I don't know, maybe that would be an interesting angle. It kind of cuts against the very mainstream liberal narrative of what
Mhm.
the right is in America. Like the post-war right was almost solely like an academic intellectual exercise. It
Yeah.
was like extremely cerebral. Um, And so again, if you're just being honest, even if you're a liberal that wants to argue that it like you're on the left somehow, in other words, and it degenerated into.
Thank you for listening to the Content Minded podcast. If you wish to support me and listen to every episode in full, then please go to patreon.com/giantartproductions and substack.com/Geo's Content Corner. There you will find the full archive of every Content Minded episode, as well as every Giant Art Review episode, and exclusive to all patrons, the weekly Cole Report, where I break down interesting stories and discourse from throughout the week. Subscribe today to keep the content renaissance alive.